didn't move when she walked in. Not even a glance. Just the same empty stare, fixed on a window that hadn't been opened in 3 years. Outside, the world was alive. Birds, wind, the distant sound of life moving. But inside the mansion and inside this man, everything had stopped. And nobody, not a single person on his staff, could tell you the last time he smiled. Before we go further, welcome to Danito Stories. If you're returning, thank you. If you're new, subscribe now. Don't skip. Don't rush. The dramatic part is waiting for you. Let's go. His name was known across 3 continents. Ethan Cole, 44 years old. Founder of one of the largest private equity firms in the United States. The kind of man whose signature could move markets, whose phone call could change careers, whose presence in a room made other powerful men sit up straighter. But that man? That version of Ethan Cole? He died the same night on a stretch of wet highway, and a moment of distraction took everything else with it. The accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. But here's what no one tells you about a man like Ethan Cole. The wheelchair wasn't his real prison. His real prison had been built long before that night. Built brick by brick, year by year, with every missed dinner, every unkept promise, every time he chose his ambition over the people who were quietly waiting for him to come home. The accident just gave the prison walls a name. Servants rotated through his estate like shadows. Nobody lasted long. Not because he was cruel, he rarely spoke enough to be cruel. But because there is something quietly devastating about serving a man who has completely given up on himself. Who wears on you, quietly, until one day you just don't come back. The agency had sent 12 different maids in 14 months. Then they sent her. Her name was Amara. She arrived on a Tuesday morning with a small bag, a neat uniform, and absolutely no awareness of the emotional minefield she was walking into. She was 28 years old. She had no idea who Ethan Cole was before the accident. She hadn't Googled him. Hadn't asked around. She simply showed up, looked at the head housekeeper and said, "Where do I start?" That question, that simple, unhurried question, would echo in ways none of them could have imagined. The first week, Ethan didn't acknowledge her existence. Not because he was testing her. He simply didn't care enough to notice. She cleaned around him like he was a piece of furniture. Not out of disrespect, but because she treated him exactly the way she treated everything in that room. With quiet, consistent care. No special softness. No fearful tiptoeing. No pity. Especially not pity. Everyone else in that house walked around him with the careful, apologetic energy of people visiting someone dying. Voices lowered. Eyes averted. Movements slow and deliberate, as if normal behavior might shatter him. Amara didn't do any of that. She dusted the shelves. She straightened the books. She replaced the water in the vase by the window, even though the flowers had been dead for weeks and no one had bothered to notice. Ethan noticed that. He didn't say anything, but he noticed. It was a Wednesday morning, the 8th day when it happened. The thing so small that a camera wouldn't have caught it. The thing so quiet that no one else in the house would have known. But the thing that would, in the weeks ahead, turn out to be the first crack in a wall 3 years in the making. Amara was on her knees near the edge of his chair, cleaning a stubborn mark on the floor. He wasn't watching her. Or so he told himself. And then she began to hum. Softly. Barely above a breath. Not a song he recognized, something without words. Something that moved like water over stone. The kind of sound that doesn't ask for your attention but earns it anyway. Ethan's hand, resting on the armrest, went completely still. Because he had heard that hum before. Not from her. From someone else. Someone who used to sit in the kitchen on Sunday mornings, making coffee she never got to finish because he was always rushing out the door. Someone who hummed exactly like that, quietly to herself, as if happiness was something private that she carried wherever she went. Someone he had lost. Not to death. To neglect. To silence. To the slow erosion of a love he kept assuming would always be there when he finally had time for it. He never had time for it. Until it was gone. His fingers tightened on the armrest. His jaw locked. His chest tightened with something that had no name but took up all the space in the room. Amara slipped. Just slightly, her cloth caught the edge of the bucket, water sloshed, and she lost her balance for half a second before catching herself on the floor with one hand. And she laughed. Not a performance. Not a polite, embarrassed laugh. A real one startled out of her, pure and unguarded, the kind of laugh that has no audience because it wasn't made for one. It filled the room. Like sunlight through a door that had been sealed shut for years. Ethan stopped breathing. Because the last time he had heard laughter in this room, real laughter, not the polished, rehearsed kind that floated through his business dinners, was the night before everything changed. The night he had come home late again and found her still awake, laughing at something on television. She had looked up at him and patted the seat beside her. He had said he needed to check his emails. He never sat down. By morning she was gone. Suitcase packed. Note on the counter. For sentences that were more honest than anything he had said to her in years. He had read that note so many times he could feel every word in the dark. Amara looked up, still catching her breath from the laugh. And she found him staring at her. Not with annoyance. Not with the flat, hollow look she had grown used to in 8 days. With something raw and unprotected, the look of a man who had just been ambushed by his own memory and had nowhere left to hide. She didn't gasp. Didn't apologize for the spill. Didn't scramble to her feet with nervous energy. She simply held his gaze for one quiet moment. And then she smiled, not the carefully measured smile of an employee, but the simple human smile of one person acknowledging another. Then she went back to work. And Ethan Cole turned back to the window. But the window looked different now. He couldn't explain it. He didn't try. He just sat with the strange, unfamiliar sensation of something loosening in his chest, a knot he had pulled so tight for so long that he had forgotten it was even there. The days that followed were different. Not dramatically. Nothing in this story moves dramatically. That's not how real healing works. Real healing moves the way mourning does. Slowly. Quietly. Until one day you realize the darkness is gone and you can't point to the exact moment it left. He started watching her. Openly now. Without pretending he wasn't. He watched the way she worked, deliberate, unhurried, as if each task was worthy of her full attention regardless of how small it was. There was a dignity in it that he recognized dimly as something he had once had. Back when he was building his first company in a studio apartment, before success made him believe that his time was more valuable than everything else around him. He watched her replace the dead flowers again, and this time she brought something from outside. A small sprig of something green, tucked into the vase like a question mark. "You didn't have to do that," he said. It was the first time he had spoken to her in 9 days. She looked up, calm as ever. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." 3 words. And somehow they landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples out in every direction. Because when was the last time anyone had done something for him simply because they wanted to? Not because they were paid to. Not because they were afraid not to. Not because they needed something from him. Simply because they wanted to. He didn't respond. But he didn't look away either. A few days later he tried to help her. She was carrying a bucket, heavier than usual, and he saw her adjust her grip twice. He moved his wheelchair forward instinctively, not thought, hand outstretched, closing the distance between them. And then he stopped, caught himself. Because the old shame rose fast. What could he offer? What help could a man in a wheelchair give to a woman carrying a bucket? What right did he have to reach out when he couldn't even stand up? Amara watched all of this move across his face. She set the bucket down on her own. Then she looked at him with an expression that had no pity in it, none at all, just a quiet, firm recognition. "The reaching matters," she said simply. "Even when you can't complete it." She picked up the bucket and walked on. And Ethan sat with those words for a long time. The reaching matters. Even when you can't complete it. He thought about all the times in his life he hadn't even reached. All the moments he had calculated the cost of vulnerability and decided it was too high. All the times he had let the distance grow because closing it felt too risky, too exposed, too much. What would his life look like if he had just reached? It was a Friday evening, golden light falling through the curtains when she stayed a little later than usual, adjusting something near the window. And he asked the question that had been forming for weeks. How do you do it? She turned, waiting. Stay like that, he said. His voice was rough, unsteady, the voice of a man still learning how to use it again. Happy. With all of this. He gestured at the room, at himself, at the general weight of existence. She was quiet for a moment. Not the kind of quiet that means she didn't have an answer. The kind that means she was deciding whether to give him the real one. She gave him the real one. I buried my mother 2 years ago, she said. And my younger brother has been sick for a while. And before this job, I had another one that ended badly and a life that didn't look anything like I thought it would. She paused. If you're feeling this story, share it so others can find it. Drop in the comment right now where you are watching from. Back to the story. I wake up every morning and I find one thing, just one, that I can care for. Something I can put my hands on and make a little better than I found it. A floor. A vase. A room. Her eyes were clear, steady, and completely without performance. It doesn't fix everything, but it keeps me moving. And moving is the only way I know how to stay alive. Ethan had sat across from senators, negotiated with Wall Street titans, delivered eulogies and keynotes and crisis statements. He had never been so completely undone by 60 words in his life. Because here was the thing. She wasn't preaching to him. She wasn't offering him a philosophy or a solution or a path forward. She was just telling him the truth about herself. And in doing so, she held up a mirror to the exact inverse of everything he had done since the accident. She had lost things too. Real things. And she had chosen to find one small thing to care for each day. He had lost things too. Real things. And he had chosen to stop caring for everything. He had mistaken numbness for strength. Silence for dignity. Isolation for control. He had built a prison and called it peace. And now a woman with a mop bucket and a dead brother and a mother in the ground was standing in his study telling him, without a single word of accusation, exactly who he had become. The tears came before he could decide whether to allow them. Not the polished grief of a man at a podium. Not the controlled, private suffering he allowed himself alone at night. Real tears. The kind that comes when something that has been locked in the dark is suddenly, violently dragged into the light. He didn't turn away. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't turn away. Amara didn't move toward him with comfort. She didn't flinch away in discomfort. She simply stayed. Present. So, giving him the rarest gift anyone had offered him since the accident. The dignity of being witnessed. The room held them both. And then, slowly, like a man remembering a movement his body had forgotten, his face changed. Not all at once. Not the wide, easy smile of a man without history. Something smaller. Something real. The corners of his mouth moved. Just slightly. Just enough. A smile that had traveled 3 years of grief and guilt and silence to finally reach his face. Amara saw it. And she smiled back, not with triumph, not with relief, but with the quiet recognition of one human being finally seeing another. Because she hadn't fixed him. She hadn't tried to. She had simply shown up every day and cared for the small things within her reach. And something about that, something about the sheer consistency of her quiet humanity had reached him in the one place no amount of wealth or power or silence could protect. His humanity reached back. He sat by that window for a long time after she left the room. The same window. The same light. But not the same man. He thought about the note on the counter. 4 sentences. He had read them 1,000 times and understood nothing. Tonight, for the first time, he understood everything. He thought about the empty seat beside her on that couch. The email he chose instead. The 10,000 small moments he had discarded like receipts, as if life would keep printing them forever. It doesn't. But here, now, tonight, for the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel the familiar crush of that realization. He felt something else. something quieter. Something that felt, impossibly, like the very beginning of something. Not redemption. Not absolution. Just the possibility of a next step. And sometimes when you've been paralyzed not just in body but in soul, the possibility of a next step is everything. It is, in fact, the whole world. The next morning, when Amara arrived, she found something on the windowsill she hadn't left there. A small plant. Potted. Alive. And beside it, in handwriting that was slightly unsteady but unmistakably intentional, a note. 2 words. Thank you. She stood there a long moment, the morning light catching the leaves of that small living thing. And she smiled. Because she knew what it meant. Not thank you for cleaning. Not thank you for the work. Thank you for not giving up on the room. Thank you for replacing the dead flowers. Thank you for humming. Thank you for reaching even when you couldn't complete it. Thank you for making something better than you found it, even when that something was me. If this story moved something in you even just a little, then you already know why it matters. Because we all have a room we've stopped caring for. A window we've stopped looking through. A smile we've convinced ourselves we no longer deserve. And sometimes all it takes is one person, not a savior, not a miracle, just one quietly consistent human being, showing up and caring for the small things. To remind us that the reaching matters. Even when we can't complete it. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. If this story moved you, hit the subscribe button for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means a lot. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.